American Airlines Flight 166 full story. Flight background. The Boeing 767-300 for American Airlines Flight 166 gleamed on the tarmac at New York's John F. Kennedy Airport in the early hours, ready for its cross-country journey to Los Angeles International Airport. Captain David McCall, with his 25 years of flying experience, was known for his calm demeanor, while First Officer Linda Hayes, an analytical mind with a reputation for staying cool under pressure, sat beside him, going over the flight plan. Meanwhile, inside the cabin, passengers settled in. Among them was a young couple on their honeymoon, a retired professor on his way to visit grandchildren, and a businesswoman nervously typing away on her laptop, attempting to meet an impending deadline. For the flight attendants, led by Sarah, it was another typical flight, and they greeted passengers with warm smiles as the last announcements were made. The engines roared to life, and as the plane sped down the runway and ascended into clear skies, all seemed routine. Unexpected turbulence. Just over an hour into the flight, as they soared over the Great Plains, the aircraft began to encounter mild turbulence. It was nothing unusual at first, just gentle bumps, but then it intensified. The plane jolted, dropping suddenly and causing gasps among the passengers. Captain McCall's calm voice crackled over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're encountering some turbulence. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened." The turbulence grew fiercer, turning smooth coffee into spills and forcing flight attendants to return to their seats. The aircraft shook violently, making metallic creaks that left passengers gripping their armrests. People glanced at each other nervously, exchanging silent fears, while outside thick clouds gathered, blocking the sunlight. Electrical malfunction. In the cockpit, alarms suddenly blared, piercing the air and breaking the pilot's concentration. Warning lights flashed across the panels as systems began to flicker sporadically. Captain McCall and First Officer Hayes exchanged tense glances. This was no ordinary turbulence. Their navigational display failed, and then the radio cut out, leaving them isolated. "Check the electrical systems, Linda." "I'll take manual control," McCall said, his voice steady but his expression intense. Hayes swiftly examined the circuit breakers and attempted to restart essential systems, but with each passing minute, more equipment failed. Instruments they depended on to monitor altitude, speed, and direction began to blank out, leaving them almost blind to the plane's status. In the cabin, the lights dimmed and anxious murmurs filled the air. The jarring sounds of alarms, coupled with the dimming cabin, unsettled even seasoned travelers. Flight attendants tried to reassure passengers, but fear spread as people sensed the growing tension. Emergency descent. A sudden loss of altitude added to the urgency. The plane seemed to fall, briefly rendering everyone weightless, with stomachs lurching as if on a downward roller coaster. Captain McCall initiated an emergency descent, hoping to reach a lower, more stable altitude. But without navigation instruments, they were essentially flying blind. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're beginning an emergency descent. Please secure your oxygen masks," McCall announced with forced calm. The oxygen masks dropped, swinging in front of passengers like pendulums. People scrambled to pull them over their faces, securing them as tightly as possible. Children clung to their parents, and the cabin was filled with muffled prayers and nervous breaths. Outside, lightning flashed as the plane entered a storm system, illuminating the clouds with eerie, violent flashes. Rain began to pound against the windows, intensifying the atmosphere of chaos within. Communication with a TC. McCall and Hayes desperately worked to re-establish contact with air traffic control at TC. After several attempts, a static-filled voice came through. "This is ATC. Flight 166, do you read?" "ATC, this is American 166. We have suffered a critical electrical failure and are descending rapidly. Requesting an emergency landing," McCall responded, his voice edged with urgency. ATC directed them toward a nearby airport in Kansas, providing crucial headings and guiding them through their rough position, despite the limited visibility. "Stay calm and follow our instructions precisely," ATC advised. The pilots shared a glance of relief, though tenuous. They now had some guidance. Working with partial control and ATC's directions, McCall and Hayes navigated, their hands steady on the controls. Preparation for landing. Back in the cabin, Sarah and her team prepared the passengers for what lay ahead. "Please remain calm and listen carefully," Sarah announced, her voice steady but urgent. "Place your heads down, brace yourself, and follow instructions closely." The passengers obeyed, some whispering comforting words to each other, while others held hands, bracing for the unknown. Sarah moved up and down the aisle, securing passengers, while flight attendants double-checked seatbelts and bracing positions. The tension in the cabin was palpable, and eerie silence filled the air as they neared the airport. Final approach. As they approached the runway, McCall and Hayes fought against turbulence and an unstable descent. With the runway now barely visible through the storm, McCall struggled to keep the plane level. "Reduce speed, steady. We've got this," McCall whispered, hands tight on the controls, eyes fixed on the rain-drenched runway. Hayes assisted, adjusting the remaining functional controls as they attempted to align with the runway, using all their strength to keep the plane steady against the storm's force. Touchdown. The aircraft hit the ground hard, slamming onto the rain-slicked runway with a jarring impact. The tires screeched, throwing sparks as the plane sped down the runway. McCall and Hayes activated the reverse thrust, and the aircraft slowed, fishtailing slightly but remaining on the runway. In the cabin, people screamed, the impact throwing some forward. Yet, as the aircraft slowed, hope began to replace the fear that had gripped them. Finally, the plane rolled to a complete stop. Aftermath? Outside, emergency vehicles surrounded the plane, their lights flashing in the early dawn. The cabin was filled with a mix of tears, laughter, and applause. Flight attendants opened the doors, guiding passengers out, each face a testament to their journey through terror. As passengers set foot on solid ground, many fell to their knees, overcome with emotion. Captain McCall and First Officer Hayes received praise for their heroism, with some passengers expressing profound gratitude for the crew's calm, professional actions that had saved their lives. The power of resilience. This incident stands as a profound testament to the resilience and strength that can emerge in the face of extreme adversity. In a moment when electrical malfunctions left the crew and passengers vulnerable and seemingly powerless, each individual rose to the occasion. The crew, led by the experienced Captain McCall and First Officer Hayes, remained unwavering in their focus, acting with incredible calm and professionalism. Despite the chaos of losing essential flight instruments and encountering fierce turbulence, their determination and training allowed them to make life-saving decisions that guided the aircraft safely to the ground. Within the cabin, the passengers exhibited their own resilience, rallying together and placing their trust in the crew. Fear and uncertainty permeated the air, yet passengers and crew alike displayed strength by supporting one another. Strangers held hands, parents reassured their children, and flight attendants like Sarah provided comfort, despite their own fear, reinforcing a sense of community in the midst of turmoil. Each person, in their own way, showed courage under pressure, demonstrating the incredible human capacity for endurance and unity when faced with the unknown.